Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore. Today in the studio, we have Paul Belcher, who is amazing and is taking our picture as we speak. Paul and I have become really good friends over the last few years. Our companies have been in business together for a long time, but he and I have become personal friends this last couple of years. And so I've been begging him, trying to get him on the podcast. We tried it once and it didn't work out, mostly because of me. I couldn't get my stuff together. But
I don't know if you want to go into that story.
No, we won't go into this story. But anyway, we're really happy to have you, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Story Cory doesn't want to go into is we tried to do it in a bar in Paris, which wasn't the best setting for a podcast. We learned very quickly.
Yeah, not only could I not get it set up, but it was like the clacking hills were going, and it just wasn't it didn't work out.
Well, we're glad that you're here in a controlled environment, because I'm excited to hear what you have to say. I've heard a lot of good things about you, Paul, from Cory, and the type of guy that you are, and he's wanted to have you on for a long time. So thanks for being here with us. Talk to us a little bit about who Paul is so that people can put some context to the things that you'll say today.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to thank you two gentlemen, both you, Kirk and Cory. I've been fortunate enough now that Cory invited me and explained to me about the Gentleman's Project. I absolutely wanted to go and learn a little more about it. And I've listened to several of the podcasts and just really want to thank you guys. It's a huge value, a huge benefit. I know you guys put a ton of time into it. And I found meaningful, useful resources and life lessons from many of the people you interviewed. So thank you for the time you guys put in to do these projects, and really appreciate it.
Well, that's very
really
kind
appreciate
of you.
being a part
Thanks.
of it. Take a lot of pride in that. So
Thanks, Paul.
So I'm 45, just turned 45 a couple days ago. I have a wonderful wife, Courtney. We've been married for 21 years. And then we have 4 kids. My oldest son is 16. He just got his driver's license a couple weeks ago. And it's kind of one of those chapters and stages in life that kind of hallmark of the transition away from little kids into teenagers. So that's been interesting and enjoyable. And he's a good kid, works hard. He's on the Lone Peak basketball team. And then my next son is 13, and Cory knows this. He's 6'1". He is a gentle giant. He is the tallest 16-year-old or 13-year-old that you'll ever meet. And
Both of his oldest boys are big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're grown men as teenagers.
Totally.
It's wild. And then we have a little princess. She's 10 years old. Her name is Boston, and she lives for and loves all things Disney. Mm-hmm. And she's just a sweetheart. And then we have a bonus baby, a 5-year-old. Courtney and I kind of taken a different approach with the 5-year-old. He is what I would call a free-range chicken. So I feel bad for the older children because they were disciplined and like we held them accountable and followed up on them. And we're letting Briggs raise himself, and he's doing a phenomenal job. And then we have 2 goats and a micro mini Highlander cow.
Oh, you do?
Which is totally
Those
unique.
are so awesome.
It is really cool. It's
a micro mini though.
Yeah, it's only
like a dog.
It's about the size of a dog. Shags out in the winter, long brown hair, totally unique. But we love the goats, love the cow. It's the weird little ranch we have next to us, so it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
So I don't think I mentioned this. Paul owns a company called Mountain Crane, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, crane company in this region. But the first time I met Paul, I'm like, well, how'd you get in the crane business? Like, where did that come about? And it's actually an amazing story. I don't know if that you were planning on talking about that, Paul, but maybe you could tell people like talk about how you grew up and how in the world you got into the crane world.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique space and a unique business. You typically don't meet someone who's in the crane industry. It's been a phenomenal industry to be a part of. We're actually the 15th largest crane company in North America.
There you go.
We do work throughout the entire U.S. We've even done several projects internationally. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be a part of the industry. Nothing I ever expected to do, nothing you go to school to learn. And it's pretty interesting how, for me, it's been a pretty interesting journey of how I ended up in that opportunity. And it really started for me with the fact that I grew up with a dad who was a serial entrepreneur. And one of my favorite quotes that I have that I found about him that I keep handy is, he's a serial entrepreneur. Somebody stop him before he makes a killing again. And really to be in the opportunity I have growing up with him and experiencing the highs and the lows and the challenges of entrepreneurship really prepared me. And I remember when we were being young, times when, our water and our gas was shut off. And I mean, before they come shut your gas off, you have to get so far behind. And my dad, having to have those hard conversations, kind of explained to us what was going on and why that was happening. But he never backed down and he never quit. He started in the early 70s. In 74, he started a residential landscaping business. And so from my very early ages, I remember actually laying sod and putting plastic pipe together. He was great about taking me to work. And then that opportunity evolved into him selling manure. So I take great pride in the fact that my dad literally was compensated to sell bull crap. And then from there, he grew the business, as he continued to do, into a commercial landscaping business. And that was in the mid 80s. And he took his first big project. And this is something all companies go through, where you take the step from small scale to larger scale. And he took that step with a government contract doing the landscaping on a dam project, and it didn't go well. And he the business ended up bankrupt, and so did he. And it was very hard on our family and very difficult times. So he naturally transitioned from commercial landscaping to owning and operating a shuttle service for the Park West ski resort. Because that's a natural step, right?
Of course.
And so Park West was a ski resort before the canyons. I don't know if everyone remembers it or not, but so he went there, and they didn't have a shuttle service to bring people from around Park City to the resort. So he started a shuttle business, which then naturally evolved into parking services. So I don't know if you remember, they had a concert series at Park West, and he would go and park the people.
That.
Yeah. He would exploit me and my cousins. We'd wear little orange vests and park the cars, and that was totally wild. So Park West eventually sold to Wolf Mountain, which then transitioned into the canyon. So that opportunity went away, and then he naturally started a automotive repair business, because that's the natural progression from
Cars, parking.
Right from, I guess, I don't know. And with that, he also started a U-Haul dealer, and he had a tire service, and he did it with his brother, my uncle. And that business started to struggle when the land costs got very expensive in Park City. And so they quit doing that because it was just not making any money, and they just stopped. And then in the early 90s, they started Park City Towing, which is still in operations today, has been hugely successful, been a great value for him, and was really the tool that we use to create Mountain Crane. So I like to share, one of the questions you guys gave me for the podcast was, what is some piece of advice that your mom or dad gave you that's held true in your life? So something that I took away, and something I write down, and something I keep in my mind at all times, and something I really want to try to pass on to my children. One of the things I think is a real value is, don't ever empower yourself to quit. So I found in my life, when you ever ask anybody, are you a quitter? Nobody considers themselves a quitter. Nobody, no matter what they're doing. What we tend to do in our lives is get to a point where we decide the obstacle or the hurdle is too big now, and I'm totally justified in my reasoning to quit trying. And it's very easy for all of us in our lives to say, you know what, I can't because I don't have enough money, or I can't because I don't know. And then we justify, and we come up with a reason to quit, and we quit. My dad demonstrated to me that no matter what, you never empower yourself to quit, no matter what the obstacles are, no matter what the hardships are. He undauntedly continued to be an entrepreneur until he found success. And nothing was ever handed or given. Mm-hmm. You just never quit, and you'll never know what doors will open. And so
what a great lesson.
Yeah, he demonstrated that through his life, and it's held true through my life. And I really hope to share that with my kids. Just don't stop trying at anything that you do. Never quit. Never empower yourself to quit.
You might have to change direction, but you don't quit.
No. Yeah, you may have to adapt to the circumstances. You may have to grow. You may have to evolve. You may have to change your path. But the last thing you do is empower yourself to quit. The other thing, and I want to talk a little bit about it, that I've learned in my life, and one thing I truly want to share with everybody, is the immeasurable value of education. And I think that everybody's very familiar with kind of formal education backgrounds, right? Going to college, getting a degree. There's so many ways to become educated on such a variety of topics.
Especially today, right?
Oh, more so today than ever.
Yeah.
And it's amazing if you'll just ask the questions and you continue to look and to continue to research. And I've been impressed owning a business. There's several, team members that work for me that really deserve a master's degree or a doctorate in their particular discipline, because they've spent the time to become experts at it. I really wish society had some way that you could nominate those team members to be a master crane operator or a master framer, or because they're not all equal by any means. Those that put the time in to be educated are so much better.
The 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yeah.
You become an expert, but you have to spend 10,000 hours doing whatever it is that you're trying to do, because in those 10,000 hours, you'll make all the mistakes that you'll ever be able to make if you learn from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's for me, that's really what I've come to learn is education. And that is such a huge value. So my education is I went to West Jordan High School, a Jaguar, graduated from high school in 95, had terrible grades, no ambitions to go to college or to continue my education. And then I went on a LDS mission to Peru, Arequipa, and learned Spanish, and had some great friends and some great leaders that influenced me and mentored me and showed me how important and valuable education was. So when I came home, I really set the goal to continue my education. I was only able to get accepted to Salt Lake Community College on reserve acceptance, which meant that if I didn't maintain at least a 3.0 my first semester, they wouldn't let me apply for another semester because I certainly hadn't put in the time to have the grades or qualifications to be there. So after a year at Salt Lake Community College, I then transitioned to the University of Utah. And then I was able to marry my lovely wife. And then she was going to BYU at the time. And then we transitioned and went to Utah State. So then I majored in Spanish at Utah State, got a minor in business, and then continued on and got my MBA of general administration at Utah State. And then I transferred to a school in Arizona called Thunderbird Global Management School. And it's a very prestigious, premier Ivy League type school focused primarily on international business, and being bilingual in Spanish, there was a multitude of opportunities. It was a very, very good time to be going there. It was, I had prepared myself. It was very challenging academically. It was a fascinating experience to me, and took a tremendous amount of pride to have grown to the point where I could attend a university of that caliber.
Quite the journey from not wanting to do anything after high school.
Yeah, and to me, one of the things that I like to share with people and with others is like, I didn't make the decision to value education until I was almost 21, 22. And like, there isn't any time you decide to make the decision to make the commitment, understand that there's no limit to the value of education, and you engage, you'll benefit and progress.
Well, I have to imagine that Thunderbird time and that master's degree and all that is a huge part of why you're so successful in your business today. Not that you didn't have to learn a lot about your business, but you knew a lot about how to run a business.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that happens is the process of learning how to learn is one of the biggest things that you gain through that. So the things that you don't understand, how do you put a team together? How do you work through it? Where do you gather the information? What is quality information? So yeah, I think that process of learning and educating yourself, and there's a multitude of ways to do that, but there's an immeasurable value to education. And so when Courtney and I were there, we'd been married about 5 years, and we received several really interesting and really neat job opportunities that were all internationally based because it was an international school, and I was bilingual in Spanish. There was plenty of opportunities. And we kind of had an interesting time in our lives where we finally really decided, we want to start a family, and that was something that was very important to us. And we made the decision that we wanted to start that family here around our family in Utah. So we moved back to Utah, and with, an MBA and a Master's of International Management, 2 master's degrees, I promptly took a job as a professional tow truck driver.
Park City Towing.
I take great pride in the fact that with 2 master's degrees, I drove tow truck professionally.
Hey. And I'm sure that has its whole different thing to learn right there.
You probably did it really, really well.
So that, interestingly enough, I drove tow truck all through of college. That's how I paid for college. My family wasn't in a position to pay for it. So when I asked my dad for some, to help, he said, well, I'll give you a second night shift, which really meant, the employee I have who I can't get rid of gets the first night shift. We're inventing something called the second night shift. If you can make money at that, then you're good to go. You're good to go.
You can pay for yourself, then we're going to do it that way.
Yeah. So through some hard work and some hustle, that's what I did. And my wife and I, and she waited tables in Park City. We didn't have any student loan when we got done with my MBA at Utah State. And she also graduated in apparel and textile. So we came back to Utah and went back to, waitressing and driving tow truck. But I joke, I did drive tow truck professionally with 2 master's degrees and do take great pride in that. That's great. And it's kind of interesting because I was going through that process and was driving tow truck again with multiple master's degrees. It was about this time of year. So some family friends from high school invited myself and my wife to a Christmas party. And it was just something they usually did before Christmas. I'd been several times, went to high school with most of the kids. And when I was there, the dad of one of my friends said, "You have 2 master's degrees, man. Why are you driving a tow truck? Like, what is the plan here? You went to school, you spent all this money, and you're driving a tow truck." And I was giving him a hard time, like, "No, man, you need these degrees to drive a tow truck." That was the plan all along. And he just kept giving me a hard time. So I finally said, "Well, I didn't want to admit it, but the truth is I've always wanted to buy your crane business." Just pulled it out of thin air right there because
just totally full of crap. You're just being a funny guy.
He's prodding me, giving me a hard time. He owned the crane business. He owned a masonry company. He owned several storage units. And then he looked at me and I said, "No, that's exactly why I went there. The plan all along was to buy your crane company. And I'm coming over on Monday. You're buying me lunch. And then I'm going to buy your crane company. And that's what we're going to do on Monday." And he gave me a hard time. And I said, "No, I was more interested in the free lunch." But sure enough, I rolled over there on Monday. And he neat individual, very successful in his own right. And he bought me lunch, kind of walked me through what's going on. And then on my way out the door, I looked back and said, "Hey, I need the information to buy the crane company." So he pulled out a yellow legal pad. I still have the page. And he wrote down 3 cranes, some support equipment, and wrote a dollar amount. It's about $2 million. Ripped the page off, handed it to me. I mean, might as well have been $1 billion. I mean, I had a Nissan Sentra that I'd paid $4,000 for and had to get a loan on. And, $40,000 in student loan from Thunderbird. And he goes, "Yeah, if you bring me $2 million, then you've bought a crane company."
Wow.
And so in between shifts driving tow truck, and because I had way too many master's degrees, I then compiled a masterful business plan. I mean, I take tremendous pride. I mean, it was 2 inches thick.
I'm assuming you still have that.
I mean, there's 3 cranes.
I think I need to see this.
You could have written the entire business plan in a paragraph.
In a page.
Yeah. 2 inches thick. Such a studious little student. So if you need money, where do you go to get money?
You have the bank.
You go to the bank, right? So obviously, as a starry-eyed 25-year-old, what else do? You take your business plan, right? Done tons of business, and went to the bank. Said, "Hey, here's my business plan. I need a $2 million loan. It's look at all the pictures, look at all the detail, look at all the industry analysis. This is impressive, right? You guys will give me a loan." And I went to all Wells Fargo and every Bank of America, every big bank you can, Zions. And I kind of had in my mind, I always kind of think of Nelson, pointing his finger and laughing on The Simpsons, because that was kind of the extent of like, you're 25, you have no assets, you have no money. Do you have any experience in the crane industry? No. Have you ever, do you have any experience in the construction? No. Do you know anything about this? No. Do you have any assets to put down? No. Like, yeah, no, we're not going to.
We need a sound effect there.
Yeah, we need a sound effect. And so, having learned from my dad and having really, one of those values, don't ever empower yourself to quit, right? And so one of the key problems I had in there was the simple reality that I didn't have anything, right? So I actually approached my dad and uncle who owned Park City Towing, and I asked them and said, "Hey, would you guys be willing to invest in this and help me buy these cranes to do this business?" And they asked some of the similar questions. Do you know anything about the crane? No. Do you know anything? Have any? No. But, here's the 2-inch business plan. It's pretty awesome.
It's really cool.
And both my dad and uncle, which was something that has meant a lot to me, they had the trust and belief that is something we could make succeed. And one of the interesting things is I had gotten that second night shift, which wasn't a real night shift. And we did parking enforcement in Park City. When it snows, they have several places you can't park so they can plow. So if cars are parked there, you can tow them and then they have to pay. So I'd wander around at night and just look for cars. I mean, it was
you were the guy.
Don't tell them what years you did that, because who knows who's listening,
I was the guy. And so really, I mean, just fighting and scrimping for any little opportunity to because we got commission on whatever we towed. And I took great pride that, I had towed the most dollars in a shift of any of their team members they'd ever had at the tow company. I'd towed the most volume of tows. And because I'd shown to them that I was committed to not just driving the tow truck, but trying to do it to the best of my abilities, I really earned their trust. And I like to share that with my kids a lot too, and say, look, whatever it is you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is. Take it seriously and put in a conscious effort to do it well. I think it's such a tendency in our lives to overlook things and say, oh, this isn't this responsibility or this assignment or this meeting or whatever it might be isn't that important. So I can just kind of blow through it. And, if it's something that somebody's expecting you to do or something you've committed to do, you'll never know the benefit, but always try your best to do it well, or just don't spend your time doing it. And that was one of the things that for me, I really benefited from that. And, I tried to work hard to do a good job, and they really wouldn't have trusted or believed in me if I hadn't done that. And it was kind of neat to see that full circle moment in my own life. Yeah.
My grandpa always says, do what you say you're going to do or tear an arm off trying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with that, then now I had that, their business, which was modest in size. I think they had 5 employees, and the business, its annual revenues were about equivalent to the dollar amount we were trying to buy in the crane. So it was honestly a bit of a stretch. But I did integrated it. Now we had a 4-inch business plan. So it
was even better.
Even better. So I went back to the same banks. Now I've got a 4, and it's like, well, what does a towing company have to do with the craning company? We're not drawing the connection here. Where's the assets? We don't quite see the ratios. It's, you've always hear that joke. The bank will lend you money the morning you don't need it.
Yeah.
And there couldn't be anything more true. And so same experience. Nelson came back out of the woodwork mocking us. And fortunately, I went to a loan officer who was in as experienced as I was at Jordan Credit Union. They have 3 little branches. He was 25 and starry-eyed as well. And we pulled out the SBA manual that was, like 3 feet thick and started thumbing through it because he said, there's got to be something in here that will work for what you're trying to accomplish. So him and I went through that and actually found a loan program that fit the criteria well enough. And he was able to present it to his board. And they said, well, the fact that you can put it together, and if the SBA will endorse this and buy off on it and then mitigate their risk, they would fund the deal. And I mean, that came out of the simple fact that he was trying to kind of build a reputation for himself, and he was being proactive, and we worked hard and put it together and presented it. He presented it as a board, and he actually got it approved, which was a shocker. But the next one in that was totally amusing is he brings us back, and it was like 6 months. He brings us back a list of things we need to bring to the closing, identification and a few other things. One of the line items was for the sales tax. $198,000. And that might as well have been $1 billion. It was certainly far beyond what any of us had. And I remember kind of telling my dad, well, this close. We had a good run. We almost got there. Where do we go from here? And in his, spirit of like never empowering himself to quit and always never being afraid to ask a question, he goes, well, I've got a good friend that owns a trucking company. And I think if you have over-the-road equipment, you can do, in lieu of the sales tax, you pay a kind of a different tax. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like a thing, but sure. So he goes, talks to his friend who owns Flinders Trucking. He said, yeah, you pay like a use tax depending on where you travel. Instead of paying it when you buy it, you pay it over time. So, that sounded like something, I guess. So we went down to the Utah Tax Commission, waited in line for like 30 minutes.
This story, man.
It's so good, right?
It looks like you're standing in line at the DMV, right? Like it's just a total. Anyway, so we get up to the counter. This sweet little older gal that I'm sure has been working there forever. What do you guys need to do? And we're like, we need to get our vehicles registered and for the tax applications in different states. And she's like, oh, you need to apportion them. And I'm like, yeah, that's the word. Sure, a portion. She's like, well, have you filled out this form? I have no idea what that form is. No. So she pulls them out. She's actually showing, no, you need to go. And so she like sent us over in the corner, got us a desk and pencil and said, look, fill this out. This is what I need you to write it. So we'd fill it out and we'd walk back up. She'd be like, okay, now you got to fill out this report of where you're going to go and what the intervals are going to be. And then you've got to track the miles. And so we walk back over, then we walk back. And she goes, now you've got to write down the equipment and the value of them. So the brand of the crane, the value. And then I looked at my dad and I was like, oh, this is where this is going to go south when when she sees that it's $2 million worth of cranes. So we write them down, write the values. We hand them to her. She takes them and she puts her head down and she's pecking away at her keyboard. And I'm just thinking, oh, this is going to be interesting. And she's pulling out files and then magically off her printer, I see this form. I'll never forget the moment. It says TC 1041 or TC 40, and it said Utah State Tax Exemption Form. and it has our crane and its serial number on it. She sets it down in this manila folder. She prints out the next two, and I'm looking at them like they're lottery tickets, right? So she folds it, and then she's handing us this little file that's got all this stuff in it. And I'm grabbing it from her, like I'm trying to, heave it out of her hands, and she won't quite release it, and I'm tugging it. She goes, well, you got to go down to the cashier. So then I quit tugging as hard at this moment, and I look down at, window number 1, we're at window number 6, and it's the sign above it says cashier. I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. So my dad and I wandered down to the cashier, hand her the folder. She opens it up, and she's going through it. She's pecking things and pulling things out. And she goes, well, the total. And I'm ribbing my dad. I'm like, oh, this is going to be embarrassing when she asked for $198,000 if we're going to pay cash or check. And we're like, oh, I left it in the car. So see ya. So I'm cringing, and she goes, your total is $6. And I was shocked. I look over, and my dad has now turned his pocket inside out of his Levi's. He's throwing the change and bills out of his pocket at this poor lady. It's splashing over the counter, and it's like crumpled dollars, and he's trying to pay her the $6 as fast as he can. Well, come to find out, when you apportion your vehicle, you have to have IFTA stickers. We needed 3 stickers. They're $2 a sticker. We owed them $6. So we left.
That's awesome.
That's
a cool story.
We left the tax commission, called the bank, and said, hey, I've got Utah state tax exemption forms. We're going to use those and pay the use tax. And he goes, well, that's not a thing. I said, no, it's actually a thing. So we submitted them to the bank. They came back and said, yeah, that's actually a thing. And so we actually still do the use tax today, but just one of those things that you never knew anything about, didn't know was out there, and helped kind of facilitate that next step. And
talk about a never give up moment.
Yeah, but you could have just said, oh man, it's just not going to happen.
Oh,
it's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Let's do something different.
Well, and I think one of the neat things and one of the hallmarks, and I think Cory probably knows this about our company, is that entrepreneurial spirit has kind of existed in our team since then. And we've grown into a lot of markets that, we're just ambitious and hungry, but
yeah, they are not a small company now, by the way. They're a very big company.
So give us some context now.
So now
how many cranes do you own now?
We own 150 cranes. We have over 300 employees. It's quite a scaled operation, as Cory says. And one of the things that I learned through that process, and one of the things I like to share, and one of the values that we continue to use and focus on at Mountain Crane, and this is one of my lessons learned that I've kind of keynoted and I like to share with my family as well, is understand what your assets are and learn to leverage them to your advantage. So I think most of us appreciate, money or maybe a physical thing as an asset and that it has value, right? I think what most of us, and I think everyone can do in their lives, is there's so many other things in our lives that are assets. The network of friends we have, our personality, a sense of humor. Many people are creative. Many people are athletic. We're all part of this wonderful country, and they have tremendous programs and support resources if you want to better yourself. And if you go take advantage of them, you'll be amazed at what's out there. But there's so many assets that each one of us have, and those assets are much greater than we all assume they are. And you'll be amazed at the doors and the things that you can build in your own life when you start taking all those assets into consideration and leveraging them to your advantage.
It's a great lesson.
Yeah, and that's really how we've opened doors as Mountain Crane, right? We try to learn our way into things, and we try to leverage our networks and our resources and our expertises and continue to build on that to open doors.
So I think that I love that, learn our way into things, right?
Yeah.
Like you hear a lot of people that say, oh yeah, I just faked it till I made it, right? But you're not faking it to try to dupe people. You're going into something not knowing everything about it, but being willing to say, I'm going to take every opportunity I can to learn about this so that that opportunity can be mine.
Yeah, when you see the opportunity, first of all, the number of resources to educate yourself on how to do the opportunities. And I'm sure Cory's seen this even here at Big D. At some point you had to take the next step into the next project. And your preparation and your commitment and your investment into educating yourself on what you're stepping into is one of the keys to succeeding at that.
Absolutely.
Like one of those swallow hard moments when you go to the next.
It's kind of like
rung in the ladder.
Like Paul's saying, you have to do a ton of due diligence and get your head around it and learn. And then, there is this moment where you've learned as much as you can without actually doing it. and then you have to do it and take the difficult moment. But
well, and I think the other thing that happens when you do it that way is the second you step into it, you're still in that learning mode. Your team's in the learning mode. You're in the learning mode. So you build knowledge and you build expertise. And I've been amazed at how often and frequently people enjoy being challenged. And if you find people that like to be challenged, you'll find a team that doesn't want to do the same thing every day over. That when you set those challenges in front of them, they'll surprise. I mean, you hear it all the time. They'll surprise you.
Well, I think that's part of a great company is they're always trying to decide what's the next mountain. Otherwise, it gets mundane, and you don't keep those kind of people who want to be challenged. And all of us want those kind of associates. But it's the same thing in life, right? I try to teach my kids that, like, okay, there's some core principles that you need to follow that they're never going to change. But you should continue to challenge yourself on what mountain you're going to climb and how high you can climb, right? Whatever that is in their life, whether it be business or dance or a sport or whatever it is. So I think that's a good lesson.
It goes back to learning how to learn.
So I was listening to one of the podcasts. Jeff Davis did a phenomenal job. And in there, he mentioned that youth is one of the times that we should push our children to face those challenges, prepare for those challenges, and take them on. And that really has stuck with me and my wife. And you realize, because like my son needed to go get his driver's license, and my wife goes, I go, no, let's let him figure it out. Like, let him go figure out how to deal with the DMV. Let's not do it for him, because this is when the stakes aren't too high. And like, if he can figure out how to, the funny thing was he didn't get his license until 3 weeks after his birthday, because he didn't make sure that everything he needed was submitted. He wasn't prepared, but it was great, because typically we would have done all that. We would have taken him there and we would have just said, stand here for the picture. And instead we took the approach of, you need to figure out how to go get your driver's license, not me. Because right now are those times when they can learn, they can be challenged, and more importantly, they can fail without huge consequences. So I thought that was one of the best lessons I took away from your guys' project. And we've used that one. It's been,
if he can navigate a government office at 16, he's got the world in his hand, man.
It's a pretty good one. So Crane Company becomes a great success. Anything else, lessons learned through business that you've taught your kids?
So one of the things that has kind of been a theme that was probably trained in me, and one of those things that's kind of developed as a mantra in our family, and I was impressed, and I was surprised. You guys ask everyone if you have a little mantra in your family, and it's always just interesting to me that everyone pretty much does, even if they haven't taken a minute to. In fact, I asked my wife, I said, do we? And she goes, yeah, we obviously do. And ours is, and we say to the kids, and they know this, we say, what do you do if you get knocked down? Because inevitably they come home, they got bullied, they didn't do well on a test, or they didn't get something they wanted, or they didn't make a team. And we say, well, what do you do when you get knocked down? And the answer is always the same. You get back up. And the part we've added to that all of our kids know and we really value is how many times. And the answer is every time. Because we really want them to understand, like, don't quit. And you are going to get knocked down. Like that's the inevitability of trying. If you're trying, you're getting knocked down.
That's cool.
And what we want from you is to get back up. We want you to get back up every time. And it was funny. I never really thought of that as a family mantra, but that is absolutely a statement all of our children knew. And I said, wow, we have a family mantra, hon. This is great.
It kind of goes with don't empower yourself to stop or to quit, right?
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. My dad always used to say, because he grew up on horses, if you get bucked off, what do? Get back on. And I like this addition of every time. So I wrote notes on this. I'm going to make sure that's in my repertoire at home, Paul.
Yeah. I like the every time because it also reinforces the lesson, like, you're going to get knocked down. That's what's going to happen. It's like, get used to it. Yeah. And you just don't give up.
Well, and so I'm drawing an analogy here, and hopefully I can do this, but I remember getting bucked off once, and my grandpa looked at me and he goes, go get that horse. And I thought he was doing it so that I would learn the lesson that when you get bucked off, you get back on. But I learned he didn't want his horse to be trained, then he can buck people off and get away with it.
There's that.
And so he was worried, one, about me. He made sure I was okay because I was a kid. But then he wanted to make sure that horse knew dang well, you don't buck off one of my grandkids, because then you've got a bucking horse. And I think when we show the world around us that when we get knocked down, we don't quit, that trains them to know, listen, no matter what happens to this guy, whether it's my boss, whether it's my dad, whether it's my mom,
teacher,
that person in my life doesn't quit.
He's just going to keep coming back to the bank if his name's Paul.
Yeah.
He's going to keep going until he finds a 25-year-old SBA loan officer that doesn't
didn't
know what
any
he's doing. I love it. I love it.
Then one of the other, because I think one of the ones that I wrote down that's also been really unique and kind of made an impression on me my whole life is when I was at MBA school at Utah State, they had the great Larry Miller come and speak, right? And this was at the time when the Jazz had just missed an NBA championship. It was kind of
still heartbroken.
Yeah, the early 2000s. And that Larry Miller was such a passionate guy. You know, he spoke with such passion, and he came to tears frequently. And so we all ran there as NBA students on the edge of our seats listening to him. And after he spoke and shared some great thoughts, he had a little Q&A. And I'll never forget one of the kids asked him, "What can I do to set myself apart? We're all MBA students here. We're all working hard. We're all trying to progress. You know, you're a great business leader. What can I do to set myself apart so that I stand out?" And, so I'm up on the edge of my seat, looking at my pencil, getting ready. Like, he's going to give me the 7 herbs and secret spices here, right? The great Larry Miller. And he says, well, the first thing you need to do is you need to show up, and you need to show up on time. Didn't even write it down. I thought, well, they hit him flat-footed. It's a Q&A. He's ready to leave. And then he stopped for a moment, and he looked, and he said, and then the next thing you want to do, because that'll beat out half the competition, if you want to close the gap and stand out, is after you've shown up, you have a great attitude. If you do those 2 things, you'll separate yourself from everyone around you in ways you don't even understand. Never wrote them down. I thought, hit him flat-footed, it's kind of a whatever answer. Now that I, employ a large number of people and been in the middle of many things, like, absolutely he knew what he was talking about. And that is one of the things I've shared with my kids, and I think is one of the most valuable lessons is if you can show up and then show up with a great attitude, you really will separate yourselves from your competition. But that was another one of the mantras or life lessons that's really stuck with me over the years.
That's a good one. So you and I've hung out with our families before and talked a little bit about social media and, that it's a different world than we grew up in. Can you give the listeners some thoughts on, how social media thinks affecting your kids, the world, and because I think you have some good thoughts on this.
Well, so for me, the social media monster is pretty fascinating just because when I graduated high school, and I don't know about you two, but I never turned anything in via email.
No.
I never submitted it.
We didn't even have email in high school.
Yeah.
I graduated in 95 like you did, so there was no email.
Yeah.
Email existed, but it was not integrated into anything.
Yeah, it wasn't how you did anything, right? It was still books. You still opened books and went through books. And like, if you wanted to communicate with people, you were by them where they could hear you. And one of the things I find fascinating about social media now is our kids, anyone that's in high school and middle school and elementary school at this time, social media is being integrated as a part of their personal identity. And I think one of the reactions we tend to have is, we'll just eliminate it. Because for us, we grew up, our identities, it isn't integrated as part of our identity. But for our kids, that social media is one of the tent poles of their identity, and it will exist their whole lives. And it's a monster that they have to understand how to learn and utilize. And it's going to be one of the key and natural ways that people interact and communicate and function. So I think we all have a natural tendency to want to take it away from them as a way to protect them from it. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is social media is this machine, and it's a team of people that are trying to entice you, they're trying to induce you, they're trying to influence you. And ultimately their goal is to make money off of you, right? I mean, that's really the goal of it. But they're so good and they're so crafty and they're so talented at how they pull on you. It's such a team of all-stars that put that together. I think what I've learned and what we have to do for our kids, they need a team. And they need a team that's protecting and supporting them that's just as talented. And we, the mom and dad, are part of that team. Counselors are part of that team. Their teachers are part of that team. Leaders are part of that team. And we need to help put that community around them so that they have a team that's balancing that equation out. Because if we just put them out there exposed, because there's a team working on them and they're working to, push them wherever they might want to push them, right? You've really got to teach them to put their team together so they can stand firm in the place they need to be. And I think it's also a little bit unnatural with the social media because everybody, in my mind, you're kind of outsourced the relationship with text messaging and social media. And what you're really trying to teach them is build friends, build allies, build mentors so that you have those tools in your life. And then, then you can grow and mature, and social media is a resource to you and not the tail that wags the dog. Yeah. But it's here to stay for forever, for businesses, for individuals, and for better or worse, it's hugely influential in the lives of youth.
It'll probably just get more influential and more powerful and more ingrained in our lives. We'll look back in 20 years and remember the 2020s as, a very simple time, I think.
Well, and I also think one of the things that's happening with it, because social media is so it's new, it's young for what it is, right? It will continue to evolve with better structure and better standards. I kind of look at it like movies. When they first came out, there was no such thing as G, PG, PG-13 and R. But as time went on, they realized, look, we need to classify these movies so people understand that those types of controls and structure will start to grow within the social media world. But it'll take time. The unfortunate thing is our children right now are the guinea pigs. And, the next generation will benefit from some lessons learned in that kind of what's the Wild West right now.
Yeah. I like asking the question, like, think about your identity as a pie and sit with your kids and kind of say, hey, what percentage of the pie is social media?
I like that.
Like, what percentage of that pie, like, be honest. How much of your identity, how much of your self-worth, how much of what you think about and do comes from social media? Is that 50% of the pie, 20% of the pie? And then let's get a team around you that helps. What other pies? There's coaches, there's teachers, there's parents, there's friends that you actually interact with. What are some other ways that we could fill that pie with good things? Maybe there's religious, church groups, whatever it might be. I think I like that idea of how much of my identity should be part of the social. It's not going away. It's going to be a part. Let's really define purposefully what it should be and what it shouldn't.
Great exercise, though. I mean, you could do that with how much of our identity is tied to what we do for a living.
Yes, exactly.
Like ask yourself as a provider or a parent the same question.
Totally.
Like how much of your identity is tied to my job? Paul, you brought a book with you today. I want to know why you brought it and what it is, and have you talk to the people about it.
Yeah. So the book I brought with me because one of the recommendations you guys gave was what was a book?
One of your favorite books.
What was it? Even more than a favorite book. What is a book I would share with my children? Right? That I would say to them, this will be of value in your life. And the book I have is called Little Ways to Keep Calm and Carry On. And it is 20 lessons for managing worry, anxiety, and fear. And I inherited anxiety from my mom. And I have tremendous anxiety, which probably will surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I have to say that Paul does not come across at all as anxiety. Like, he's laid back, he's fun, he's engaging, he's maybe he's spontaneous in a big way, in my opinion. So anyway, if you don't know Paul, he kind of comes across for sure as the opposite of that.
Yeah, and it's been interesting in my life because fortunately my mom put in a lot of work, and I really do. I love my mom; she's wonderful, and she really figured out how to deal with those challenges in her life, so that they didn't rule her life. And so I've benefited from her mentoring and teaching me that example, and always been grateful for that. And with the anxiety, the reason I like this particular book is it starts out in a very, very interesting, very simple little question, because anxiety is something inherent in all of us, and it's something we've all carry as human beings for a very, very specific purpose. So the little example they share is a caveman's in a cave, right? Winter's on. He looks over, a bear walks in the door. If you're sitting in a cave and you got a little fire, you look at a bear, you're going to think this isn't good. And you're going to, want to run, and you're going to want to get out of the situation as promptly as you can. You're going to be overrun with fear, right? And then in the book, it kind of shares, well, the opposite side of that coin is the caveman who sees that bear walk in, and he realizes that his fire is a pile of clubs, and he's going to grab a burning club, and now he's got meat for the winter and a blanket to sleep comfortably. And the best thing that ever happened was this bear walked in the front door. And it's just such a different approach to understanding what's in front of you and understanding how to approach it and how to deal with it and how to attack it. But anxiety is real, and those challenges that come from those mental health They're real disability. And it's always been frustrating to me because if you have a broken ankle, everybody looks at you and says, oh, get on crutches. Let's get you a wheelchair. And everyone's understanding and they get it. They know how to help you and it's obvious. It's no different with, mental and emotional struggles. It's a sprained ankle and you can't see it and you don't understand it. And people kind of shrug their shoulders and they're not sure how to help you, but it's no different. And what you do if you have a sprained ankle is you treat it, you care for it, you rehab it, and you're fine. And it's the same thing with those emotional and mental challenges is that's how you treat them. And this has been for me, I carry it. I don't love to fly, but which also surprises Cory because I'm platinum Delta because I fly too much. And I keep it in my carry-on because I still get anxiety when I fly and I still do the exercises in the book. It's not a very long book. It's a few hundred pages, if that, and it's not even full size. But it's a great resource for me and it's helped me and I feel very confident and comfortable and understanding that I have anxiety, understanding part of who I am has helped me manage it. And, it's kind of one of the big first steps for a lot of people is to have the ability to say, hey, I don't do this well, or this is a natural challenge I have in my life. And so the question is, what tools and resources can help you deal with that? And so I just wanted to educate myself on anxiety and educate myself really on ways to deal with it. And
he deals with it. I'm going to tell a story. I hope it's okay. We were on vacation and we're on this little boat. My wife and I decide that we're going to get off the boat. We had planned this ahead of time, get off the boat and go to this hotel to stay in for an extra night kind of a thing. And Paul had not planned on doing this. He just happened to be in the boat that was dropping us off on the way. And he looks at his wife and he's like, let's go. And she's like, what? And he's like, let's go, get off the boat. We're doing it too. And she's like, well, but all of our bags are across like this bay, like they're miles away in a different ship. What are we going to do? We'll figure it out. Let's just go. And I'm looking at him and this is like the first time we really hung out. And I'm looking at him like, are you kidding me right now? This guy's awesome. He just couldn't be more spontaneous. Oh, we'll figure out how to get our bags. And then we had lunch and had a great lunch. And I heard the crane story for the first time ever. And so to hear this, really the first time ever I've heard that he, has anxiety sometimes and things. That's the opposite in my mind of anxiety. We'll figure it out. And that really is his personality.
Well, and it goes to show that he has recognized that one, that's a natural thing that you deal with, a natural challenge that you deal with. That's what the words that you used, and how to create that almost like a superpower when you turn it around. Once you recognize you have it, how do you manage it, and what do you do to overcome it? And it almost turns it on its head.
Well, and I think one of the challenges most of us have is we see that as a defect or a shortcoming. And when you move your mindset from a defect or shortcoming, what Cory's not sharing is this was the Four Seasons in Bora Bora, and where we were staying was over water lodges. So he makes it sound like it was like when you're at a pier and you jump off and then you're in the Four Seasons Bora Bora over water bungalows. You jump off the boat.
I want to go.
Yeah, this wasn't a terrible exercise in anxiety, right? It wasn't hard. But Cory had like luggage, like he was going, we were just as a night. Cory had enough luggage to stay at the resort for probably a month. And
right. Those were all my wife's, and I don't care if she's listening. They were definitely her bags, and she knows this.
Oh man, we all know how pretty you are, Cory. We all know you're. We know how. That one bag was full of beard product,
and one bag was. Maybe two were probably shoes, my wife's shoes. Anyway, we are totally out of time. Although I have about 5 more questions for this guy, but maybe we should finish with our always ending question, Paul, which is we ask every guest, what does it mean to you to be a gentleman?
So I think that one of the things that's been neat for me and being a part of your project and having heard some of the podcasts is that very question. And I think we all know the word, and I think we all know the definition of it, but I'd never taken a moment to kind of ponder on what does that mean to me, and why is it an attribute that I want or an attribute I would want my children to have. And for me, I really think that when I think of, what is a gentleman, it's somebody who's got tremendous pride, but yet tremendous humility and is very hardworking. And I think that's to me, those are the attributes that every one of us want our children to have, and we take great pride in that. And I think you guys are doing phenomenal work. I think these podcasts are very insightful, and I think I've gained more by preparing for it. And I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me and giving me the opportunity to be here. And I hope you guys continue to do this, and I hope you continue to share these podcasts with the world. So thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thanks for being on. Fantastic job, Paul. Thanks for being with us.
I think one of the important things is that we just have a consciousness of it. Like, you know, like if you are listening to the podcast and you've never taken the time to answer that question yourself, which if you've listened to any of them, you know, I hope you have, but it's the consciousness of saying, what's my ideal? What do I want to be? What do I want to become? And then having that manifestation of what that looks like, and hearing other people so that you can also formulate what it does. What does it mean to you? What's your ideal for yourself? And what's your ideal for your family? So
I think that's the most value in the question. What you just explained is the valuable part in that. And it'll be different for everyone.
Right.
Yeah,
Being
it should be
conscious of it,
different.
it was neat.
Well, thank you for joining us. And thank you to our listeners also today for joining us. Really, really cool stories behind the man and his story of how he's become who he is. Thank you for sharing some of those things with us that are personal. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore. Be a gentleman.